There have been mixed reaction around the globe to the news that Donald Trump had once again secured enough electoral votes to make his way back to the White House. Trump has already been congratulated by world leaders, including President Cyril Ramaphosa. He will be sworn in as America's 47th president at his inauguration on the 20th of January next year. To look at Trump's plans for a second administration, we are now joined by the director of African Center for the Study of the United States, University of Pretoria's Professor Christopher Isike. Good to have you, Professor. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, Leanne, and thank you for having me.
So this, an absolute incredible comeback. It surely is one of the most dramatic comebacks in US political history. With everything that was thrown at Trump, he still came out victorious. What went wrong for the Democrats here?
Well, it's a lot of things, many of which can be academic. We could look at the fact that Kamala Harris joined this race just 17 weeks ago, compared to Trump that had been on the race for 9 years now. It could also be poor messaging on the part of the Democrats. They could not craft a simple and direct message that will resonate with ordinary Americans about the economy, about questions on immigration. Trump's message was so simple. Biden-Harris broke it. I will fix it. I will deport illegal immigrants and stuff like that. So those could be academic reasons why this has happened. But if you drill down deeper, you begin to see that they resonate with the two questions that underlie American politics historically, and these are the questions of racism and sexism.
And certainly is one of those things where you have to ask the question, do you think that Harris's race and gender played a pivotal role in her being defeated, or was there a lot more to it? But is that an issue?
Well, like I said, the other reasons are academic, and many of them are traceable to that. Donald Trump ran a campaign of fear, the one that made that stoked, white fear in losing white privilege in America, and these things are historical. If Donald Trump had contested with a woman in 2020 despite COVID, he would have won that election. So race and gender do have a role to play, especially when you look at every rule of campaigning, electioneering, politicking in the great United States of America that were broken by Donald Trump. If any of those rules were broken by Kamala Harris during the course of the race, she would have been disqualified. She would have been out of the race a long time ago. So it's like two people going for an exam, but each of them having different examination papers.
So I want to talk a little bit about, Trump, because the reality is that, he's not just won the White House, because that is a big thing. This has been an outright win, which is quite incredible for the Republicans. But let's have a look and see now. One of the big glaring issues are all of these charges that are still pending and hanging over Trump. I mean, you've basically got the most serious criminal charges and cases he's facing, 2 federal indictments accusing him of mishandling classified information and documents, seeking to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential elections. Also 2 proceedings in state court about hush money cases in Manhattan. He has been convicted of 34 felony counts, as well as a case in Georgia alleging he meddled in the 2020 election. I mean, what happens now?
Well, like you said, despite all of this, he still won the elections. And again, I will come to your question of what happens now, but you need to look at the race in the governorship race in North Carolina, which was lost by Robinson, a black person, who made inappropriate and vile comments just like Trump. And even Trump himself distanced himself from him. The people of North Carolina rejected that governor, and still voted for Trump. So Trump won North Carolina. Now, to the question of what would happen now, remember Trump during the campaign had said that as soon as he becomes president, he would dismiss Special Counsel Smith, and that would be the end of the case. In actual sense, he doesn't have the powers to dismiss the special counsel because the special counsel is not appointed by the president. However, the law also says that you cannot prosecute a president-elect or a sitting president. So those cases will have to be dropped, and all those ones where he's been convicted, I'm sure that Trump would be able to enact the special pardon powers of the president to pardon himself.
And in this particular new term that he's going to be going into, he's going to have a lot more power, and that goes without saying. I mean, he has said that one of his first part of calls is to actually fire the existing Attorney General and appoint his own, which he has now the right to do. And this, of course, may work very, very well for him. In fact, he will have now the ability to appoint anybody into any position that he wants. I mean, this is going to be a very different presidency under Trump, you know, but in his first term, he obviously had to abide by regulations and things that were already put in place. But going into this term, this is going to be one of, I imagine, revenge and also putting who he wants into whatever position.
Yeah, absolutely. He has a stronger mandate now. He's won the popular vote, something that no Republican president has done in 20 years. He's won the Senate, and he's probably on course to also win the House of Representatives. So this is complete power to do as he pleases. And you remember that in his first term, he spent the first 2 years just trying to learn how to govern. And that's why you had, high-profile resignations, changes within months. But this time, he has an agenda. It's well scripted. He knows exactly what he's going to do. But again, too, I don't think that he's going to be as haphazard as his first term was. And he may not be as vengeful as he portrayed himself to be during the electioneering campaign. Remember that he's wont to making claims that, promises of things he would do, and he would not do them. This time he's also older, wiser. He's escaped an assassination attempt. There's a thinking that he could bring the country together as he promised to do, but it will depend on the kind of resistance and opposition that he gets from the Democrat Party. So we'll just have to really wait and see what he does.
Yeah. Now, there's been a lot of nervousness as well from different foreign countries, and also waiting to see now where the position of the US stands when it comes to political relations, because that wasn't spoken about during the victory speech that we saw him giving, an early victory speech at that, but nonetheless one that stands, and he knew that he had that in the bag. But in terms of, let's bring it to Africa first, the relations, and we've spoken quite a lot about it. We certainly did yesterday, but now that it is a reality, in terms of Trump's view on Africa relations, where does it leave us? I mean, is this something we should be a little bit worried about? The currency didn't like it, particularly here in South Africa. Or was that just jitters? What do you think's happening?
Well, that view, so the view of the president is important. Of course, we know that every American president would have to abide by American national interests. Okay, so these do not change. So irrespective of who becomes president, whether a Democratic Party or Republican, the interest of the United States is permanent. So that's a starting point. But the personal idiosyncrasies of a sitting president matters, and a president has some influence in changing the direction and approach of how the United States deal with different countries. So Trump had nothing but contempt, for Africa in his first term. And you will see that during the electionary campaign, Africa did not feature at all, on both sides, by the way. So it means that there will be, Africa is not a priority, will not be a priority. It will be worse under Trump. He never visited the continent, for example. His approach to, relations with the continent was much more transactional and bilateral. What can I get and such. So that is going to be expected to continue. But I think that he's also going to try and weaponize instruments that are already in place, which previous administrations have weaponized. That's the use of AGOA to try and force countries in Africa to two particular positions of the United States. That is going to continue in a president that is very transactional. But there are also positives to that. The fact that he would want to favor investment and business between the United States and Africa, rather than United States giving aid to Africa. Maybe that's a good thing. It's high time we begin to look inwards, so focusing on what we can get from big powers and trade more with ourselves. So maybe this is time for us to look at what we can do with our African continental free trade area. Another positive that can come out is the fact that Trump is not interested in green energy transition. So countries in the continent that want to use their fossil fuel deposits to develop their economies will have a free rein, to do so. Is this a good thing for the world environmentally? Maybe not so. However, these are some of the things that will ease up on for Africa in terms of the Trump presidency.
Yeah, I mean, there are many issues. I mean, we could talk about healthcare and everything along with that, as well as you say, in terms of the environment, because Trump has been very vocal about that as well. And I doubt that he'll want to remain a part of any treaties with regard to protecting the environment and cutting back on gases. But one thing he's also a skeptic of is the NATO alliance, accusing Europe of free riding on America's promise of protection. The chances of the US actually withdrawing from NATO, he certainly has been very vocal about the whole Ukraine issue.
Yes, and Ukraine particularly will be one issue that he has promised to fix very quickly. There are speculations that he would allow President Putin to have a free rein. And one of the ways to do that is to just stop funding the war in Ukraine. And once they do that, Ukraine will not be able to resist much. With respect to NATO, he's done this before. His view is that countries in NATO should be able to pay for their own protection. America cannot underwrite, their security needs. And the war in Ukraine, one of the things that have come out for it positively for Europe is the realization that they have to take their own security in their own hands. And so there's been a lot of upscaling of defense spending and military training amongst NATO troops. So it looks like even if that were to happen under Trump, NATO should be able to take care of its own security. But the impact of a Trump presidency are wide-ranging, and they cut across the economic, the political, the diplomatic, and they will affect different countries differently depending on how Trump chooses to engage with different countries.
Professor, let's talk about the Middle East and Israel, the issues that are happening there, because it's no secret that Trump certainly does favor Israel and has very strong relations. And in fact, Netanyahu jumping onto X and congratulating him and saying this is the greatest comeback or political comeback. But the reality is that this is a war that's raging, whether we talk about Gaza, whether we talk about Lebanon. I know that they've just bombed overnight. They nearly hit the airport in Beirut, the only working airport there. But, this is also another issue that is going to come under immense pressure. What are your views there?
Well, you're correct. And this is something that directly affects South Africa. In fact, I dare say President Biden had a special love, if you can call it that, for South Africa, because if it was under Trump that South Africa acted the way it did with Russia and its position on the current Israel-Palestine conflict or war, Trump would have been much more punitive in terms of how the United States responded. So like you said, he has said that he wants he would do everything in his power to ensure that Israel wins and that Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations in the Middle East are decimated, and he's going to definitely do that. But the question would be at what cost, and how does this stand with the Republican ideology of freedom of life? Talking about the abortion ban. How does this contradict the idea that the Republicans care about the unborn child, but do not care much about living children and women that are being killed by American support and guns in Gaza and in Palestine? So these are issues that would also shape the way things will go geopolitically in the next couple of months.
Prof, the final question just to ask you in terms of and very quickly, we're out of time, but AGOA, I can't close this interview without talking about it. I mean, some US politicians have long expressed unhappiness about South Africa's inclusion in AGOA, both because of its relationship with China and Russia, but also because it's a richer country on the continent. Do you think this is the end of South Africa's inclusion? We lost Prof. It's such an important question, but that is one that everybody's asking, and it'll be very interesting to see what does happen. But we do thank very much so the opinions of Professor Christopher Isike. We'll be speaking a lot more about that. He, of course, is the director of African Center for Study in the United States at the University of Pretoria. So the AGOA issue, one that will be discussed very much so, but also a lot of other things. So the 20th of January is when the inauguration does take place, and we'll see, obviously, the changing of hands from then. But